Today is Chapter 6, the Muscular System, Lecture number 3. Today we're going to be talking about a couple of different topics. The first one is going to be providing energy for muscle contractions. The second one will actually be the joint movements that the muscles allow. So for providing energy in the for muscle contractions, y'all should remember that all sorts of energy for contractions or for any type of movement in the body comes from ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. When you have muscle fatigue, basically what happens is you're unable to contract any of your muscles while it's being stimulated. This can be due mainly to oxygen debt. It depends on the blood supply. If you're used to working out, or whatever you're doing with that muscle, if you're running, if you're not used to running a whole lot, you're going to go into oxygen debt a lot quicker than if you were used to running. And that oxygen debt has to be repaid before you can actually regain the use of that muscle. So you have muscles that will actually give out. What happens is once you go into oxygen debt, lactic acid is going to start building up and your muscles will be sore and tired for the next couple of days. Lactic acid is just one of those substances that will sit on the muscle until it's washed away. So it's really important to make sure that you're getting plenty of water and fluids so it can wash that lactic acid off, because remember I said that your muscles are bathed in fluid. When you're going into oxygen debt, basically your breathing is going to pick up, your heart rate will be picked up, and you'll want to do deep breathing so that you can pay that oxygen debt back quicker. The next way that you can go into oxygen debt is if you have a low supply of adenosine triphosphate. If you have not eaten like you're supposed to before you work out, or if for some reason you've been deprived of food for several days other than just the bare necessities, you're not going to have a lot of ATP to energize those muscles. So you need to make sure that you really have the nutrients and the food that you need in order to make sure that your muscles are working correctly. You have isotonic contractions and you have isometric contractions. So isotonic is when your muscle shortens and you're actually moving. So bending your knee, rotating your arm, smiling, anything that you're actually causing movement. We call that isotonic movement. Isometric movement is when the tension increases but the muscle's not going to shorten. So when you're pushing against a wall, you can push all you want to, but if you're not actually moving, then it's not doing anything but isometric. Muscle tone. Muscle tone is basically when you have a muscle that is in a partially contracted state. It causes people to look like they have, if you have good muscle tone, you're going to be able to see their muscles. It's not just going to be flat. There will be the curves of the muscle there. So sustained partial contraction, when people have that, you know that they've got good muscle tone. It's also due to a good nerve supply. If you for some reason don't have, either if your nervous system is not working like it's supposed to, if you've got something like muscular dystrophy or something like that, and those nerves are not feeding those muscles with the electrical impulses that they need, then you will not have good muscle tone. Your muscle tone also keeps your muscle healthy and ready to react, so therefore you're ready for action. You're ready to run, you're ready to lift weights, you're ready to wrestle, you're ready to do whatever you need to do that you're getting ready for. Paralysis is basically where you have no stimulation. The muscle is going to become flaccid and it's going to atrophy, which means it's going to shrink. So if you've been paralyzed or you know somebody that's been paralyzed, you'll notice that after their paralysis, their muscles will shrink. So if they're not able to use their legs, then they will definitely have muscle atrophy from that. Continuing with the muscle tone, the effects of exercise on muscle is it is a use it or lose it type of thing with muscle. So if you are, working out, if you're doing aerobic exercise, if you're, active in any kind of way, playing tennis, swimming, football, basketball, whatever, you're using those muscles. But if you notice, if you let's say that you're an avid tennis player, you can play tennis all day long. If if you've been playing it for a long time, for multiple years, you can use those muscles over and over and over and over, and you're not going to get sore. But if that same person tries to go out and lift a bunch of weights, and they're not used to lifting weights, they're still going to get sore from it. So just because you're active in one sport or one activity, it doesn't mean that you're using all of your muscles, and you can get sore still from doing different types of workout. Your aerobic exercise, which is your endurance exercises like running, biking, swimming, it does very little to actually increase the mass of the muscle, but it causes the muscle to become stronger, flexible. You don't get as much fatigue in it, and there are multiple benefits. Number one, the benefits to your skeletal muscle, obviously they're going to be stronger because they're the muscles that are attaching to your bones and making your bones move. Your metabolism will be faster because you're burning a lot of energy, a lot of food is being burned from doing the endurance exercise. Your digestion will be more regular. The elimination of waste, you'll notice that your body wants to flush out anything that is not supposed to be there, and it wants to do it quickly. So your digestion is more regular. Your neuromuscular coordination, you're going to have better balance. You're going to be able to respond quicker to things. You're not going to be as clumsy. Your skeleton also benefits because the more you exercise, as long as it's within a healthy range, it allows your bones to absorb a lot more calcium. Your blood vessels, you will actually grow new blood vessels to wherever your whatever muscles are growing. If you're doing running and that kind of activity, you will actually increase the amount of blood vessels in your feet, in your legs, all over your body. So examples of all these are, like I said, running or jogging, biking, and then aerobics, swimming, etc., etc., etc. Resistance exercise, we call these are your isometric exercises. This is when your muscles contract with force. It enlarges the muscle cells. Examples would be weightlifting. Whenever you see anybody that has never lifted weights and then they start lifting weights, you see a huge difference with them, usually within a month or two. 5 golden rules of skeletal muscle activity. You can find this in chapter 6 of your book. It's table 6.2. Basically, all muscles are going to cross at least one joint. That's one of the biggest rules of skeletal muscles. Your muscle is going to cross at least one joint. If you think about your bicep, it actually attaches at your shoulder, and then it attaches down at your radius and ulna, because that's what it's pulling up. It's pulling your radius and ulna up. So your muscles, they're not just there to look nice, they're actually there to have a function. The second one is typically the bulk of the muscle lies proximal to the joint crossed. Okay, remember your vocab, the difference between proximal and distal. Proximal is going to be closest to the attached base. So with your bicep is going to tend to be bigger on the upper part of your arm as opposed to the distal or the further away part where it attaches down to your forearm. Rule number 3. All muscles have at least 2 attachments, the origin and the insertion. So for bicep, the origin is the shoulder because it's not moving the shoulder. The insertion is where it's going to be moving, whatever it is moving. So the insertion would be down on the forearm. Rule number 4, muscles can only pull. They do not push. So if you have a muscle that is going to flex your arm up, like your bicep, the opposing muscle is going to be your tricep. Your tricep is the one that actually will pull it back down. So the muscle's job is to pull. Rule number 5 is during a contraction, the muscle insertion moves towards the origin. So once again with your bicep, it inserts down at the forearm, and that is actually the part that it moves up, is the forearm. So, types of body movements. You will have a worksheet that goes with this. You need to make sure that you have it. If you do not have it, make sure that you ask for the joints worksheet, and the joint movement worksheet is the one that you need to go with this. This is a color sheet. Make sure that you see my example to know how to color it. And it would probably be best if you color it while you're listening to this lecture. So types of body movements, we're going to start with the origin. The origin is attached to the immovable or the less movable bone. So for example, I told you with your bicep, the origin is your shoulder, because your bicep is not moving your shoulder. It's moving where it is inserted. So insertion is it's attached to the movable bone. So your bicep is moving your forearm up. Flexion is the decrease in the angle of the joint. So if you're flexing your bicep, you're pulling your forearm up, and it's going to decrease the angle of your elbow joint. Extension is going to increase the angle. So that's what your tricep does. Your tricep pulls your forearm back down, and it makes it back into a 180-degree angle. Abduction with a B. Abduction is moving away from the midline. The way that I remember this one is if somebody's being abducted, they're being taken away from somebody or something. So if it's abduction, it's going to move away. It's going to take away from the midline. Adduction is going to be moving towards the midline. And the way that I remember this is if you add something, then you're combining it. You're moving it, it's going to be greater, or it's going to move together or add together. So with adduction, it's moving towards the midline. So abduction would be like if you're standing in anatomical position. Abduction would be you moving your arm up and towards your head. Adduction would be you moving it back down towards your side. Rotation is our next one. Rotation is the movement around a longitudinal axis. We've got multiple different joints that will do rotation. Circumduction is the circular motion of a joint. So if you circumduct something, it's like moving your arm in a big circle, moving your leg in a circle. Anything with a ball and socket joint will do that. Depression is movement downward. And then you have pronation, which is face down. And you already know the word prone. You learned that at the very, very beginning of this semester. Prone is to lay face down, and pronation is to, go face down. Then you have the opposite of pronation, which is supination, and that's face up. So remember that supine means face up, supination means face up. Supination comes from the word supine. Depression, I think that we actually already did that one, but just make sure you got it. It's movement downward. Elevation is movement upward. So depression is movement downward, elevation is movement upward. Retraction is a movement that goes posteriorly. So remember, you have anterior and posterior. Posterior is on your back side if you're standing on two legs like a human does. So if you're going to move it posteriorly, that is called retraction. Inversion is where the sole of your foot faces medially. You're going to turn your foot to the medial or midline of your body. Eversion is when your sole faces laterally, so away from the midline. You rotate your foot sideways to the outside. Dorsiflexion is where your heel is down and the sole of your foot is up. We call that flex for your foot. And then plantar flexion is actually the toe down, heel up, which is the point. So if you flex your foot, you're in dorsal flexion. If you point your foot, it's called plantar flexion. So this is the end of our lecture for today. Make sure that you have completed the color sheet that goes with it. Make sure it is all the way done. All of your color sheets are going to be due on Monday. Have a great day.